All sutras, most sutras were translated from Sanskrit, a classical Indian language in India, commonly used in India 2,600 years ago. And this is one of the sutras, Diamond Sutra. So we'll finish section or chapter 1, and we have partially finished chapter 2. But let's read chapter 2 again. Section 2 or chapter 2. At the time, the elder Subhuti, who was in the assembly, rose from his seat, uncovered his right shoulder, knelt upon his right knee, respectfully joined the palms of his hands, and said to the Buddha, "Rare and world-honored one, how well the Tathagata protects and thinks of all bodhisattvas, how well he instructs all the bodhisattvas. World-honored one, virtuous men and women develop the supreme enlightenment mind. How should their minds abide? How should they control their thoughts?" The Buddha said, "Well said, Subhuti, just as you say, the Tathagata protects, cherishes, and instructs all the bodhisattvas so well. Now listen attentively and I will tell you how the minds of virtuous men and women who develop the supreme enlightenment mind should thus abide and be subdued. Oh yes, well-honored one, I should be glad to hear your instruction." I haven't finished the last 2 paragraphs of chapter 2. So, what's the last 2 paragraphs? How the minds of virtuous men and women who develop the supreme enlightenment mind should thus abide and be subdued. So, how the minds of virtuous men and women, what is the meaning of virtuous men and women? Some translators translate virtuous men and women as noble men and women. Virtuous men and women refer to those with even temper, to those who would listen to the teaching and practice the Buddha's teaching, who would like to practice the virtues of humanity. Virtuous men and women. Unvirtuous men and women, they would not listen to it, they would not practice it. So virtuous men and women are all those who have even temper, who pursue the practice of the virtues of humanity. They are the ones who like to learn about it. Just as you are today. By definition, you are the virtuous men and women because you like to know about spiritual development. You don't attach to materialism that much now. You want to revert back to the spiritual side of life. We know that we can't derive happiness solely from material. We all know that already. Happiness starts from the mind, not from material. Does not matter how much material you have. You won't feel happy unless your mind is at peace. How can you feel happy if you are just surrounded with material and your mind is not at peace? Your mind is always worrying, you're always jealous, you're always greedy. You don't feel comfortable, you don't feel peaceful. How can you be happy if you're not peaceful? So it's the mind. Virtuous men and women who pursue supreme perfect enlightenment. Supreme perfect enlightenment is samya sambuddhi. In the long word, Sanskrit word is anuttara samya sambuddhi. Anuttara means not going back. You're not going back to the world of pollution, to the world of confusion. You're going to that destination which is leading to the perfect supreme enlightenment. So, for virtuous men and women like yourselves who like to pursue anuttara samya sambuddhi, who like to pursue non-reverting back, perfect, supreme enlightenment. How do their minds abide? How do they think? How should they think? And how do they control their mind? So for first-time comers, now we know the Buddha's teaching is about the mind. It's not about blind faith and worshipping. It's about the mind. Do you want to know your own mind? The Buddha said, well said, Subuddhi, just as you say that the Tathagata protects, cherishes, and instructs all the Bodhisattvas so well. Now listen attentively and I will tell you. We already explained who is Subuddhi. Just as you say, the Tathagata. The Tathagata, what is Tathagata? Tathagata is another epithet or title of Buddha. The Buddha has 10 titles, We already have gone through that. One of the titles interesting is Sugata. And there are people who adopt that first name, Sugata. What is Gata? Gata means gone. Sugata means you go forward, Sugata. Gade, Barakade, Barazam Gade, Buddhishwaha. Gone, go well beyond. From the shore of confusion to the shore of enlightenment. Gade. Gade means go. Get away from attachment. Get away from greediness, hatred, jealousy, depression, anxiety. Get away from those mental defilements and go to that shore of enlightenment which is free from mental defilements. And then it says, oh yes, well-honored one, I shall be glad to hear your instructions. So let's go to chapter 3. The Buddha said to Subuddhi, all Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, should subdue their minds as follow. Bodhisattvas is those sentient beings who are pursuing the path of spiritual development, who wants to know about what's life, how to liberate ourselves from reincarnation, how to free ourselves from the bondage of life, how to free ourselves from all those mental defilements, how to free ourselves from the three poisons of greediness, hatred, and anger. How do we get away from those? Mahasattvas, a transliteration of the Sanskrit Mahasattva, is a term of respect for Bodhisattvas. Maha always means great. Mahasattva means great beings, one possessing great determination for enlightenment and outstanding personage. Next paragraph. All living beings born from eggs, born from wombs, born from humidity, born by transformation, whether with form or without form, whether they have perception or do not have perception, either thoughtful or thoughtless, and neither thoughtful nor thoughtless, we must lead all the beings to the final nirvana for the extinction of reincarnation. So, the Buddha begins by saying, Bodhisattvas are always helping sentient beings from suffering. If you are someone who is always helping people, helping them out from suffering, you're a Bodhisattva. And the Buddha starts to tell us all living things. What's the definition of all living things? All living things. How do we get born? Living things, the Buddha classify, you see, sutras deal very much in detail with life. When the Buddha said one word, he explained it. All living beings born from eggs, born from wombs, born from humidity, born by transformation, whether with form or without form. We must know what we're talking about. We're talking about, first of all, before Buddha answered the question, Buddha lays out all the facts first, all the material first, and then Buddha slowly lead you into understanding how do we abide our minds, how do we control our thoughts, how do we free ourselves from reincarnation. So we go one step by step. So when you're reading a sutra, you must know, you must have patience. There's no one word direct answer, yes or no. Can we be liberated? Yes, we can. No, we cannot. We don't do it by a one word answer. We do it by analysis, investigation, reasoning. You don't believe in something without understanding it. That's called blind faith. You worship and prostrate in front of the Buddha because of what? You don't understand it and you're just prostrating, or you're just worshiping. That's blind faith. You got to know why. So, the Buddha said all living things, all living beings, and he classified them for us. The 4 crude modes of birth. Those living things born from eggs. What are those living things? You should know. Born from eggs. Chickens, winged birds, ostrich, many living beings born from eggs. Turtles, dinosaurs, you know them. That's the first mode. That's the first. We're born from wombs. So that's the first mode of birth. The second mode is from the mother. And we know human beings, cows, lambs, most animals, lions, tigers. That's the second mode of birth. And how about born from humidity? What living things are born from humidity? Worms, insects, butterflies. Some butterflies from humidity. Some butterflies butterflies are born from humidity. And what else were born from humidity? Many of them. That's the third mode of birth. The fourth mode of birth, being born by transformation. Now that's more difficult to understand. That which is born through spontaneous and miraculous generation. Death or disappearance in one mode, and birth and appearance in another mode almost spontaneously. What do we mean by that? People who passed away, if they have done so much unvirtuous deeds, so much bad deeds, killing, lying, sexual misconduct, stealing, slandering, cursing, they've done a lot of bad deeds because of their karma. They were reborn in hell. They were victims of hell. They were born by transformation. In other words, the body, no more body, and they will be reborn by transformation. And for those who have done virtuous deeds, benevolent deeds, they were born in heaven. And they born by transformation too, if they are in Rupa Dhatu and Arupa Dhatu. So, born by transformation ghosts, for example, devas or demigods in heavens. So the two extremes. So everybody wants to be born in heaven? We all want to go to heaven. Heaven is not the way to go. It's not the ultimate destination. Heaven is still subject to reincarnation. So we should be out even of heaven. Get away from. Of course, heaven is much better than all the other paths of reincarnation. It's much better. Only for those good people who perform good deeds will go to heaven. So, without too much detail, so we have the 4 modes of birth. And that almost include all. When you're reborn into the pure land, the land of Amitabha, you're born by transformation too. When you passed away here, Spontaneously, you will appear on the lotus in the Buddha land, in the land of Amitabha, by transformation. That is an intermediate state where you learn to become the Buddha. How many Buddhas are there in this universe? Billions of Buddhas. Those who are enlightened, fully, perfectly enlightened, who already have attained Anuttara Samya Sambuddhi, they are the Buddhas. So you are the same as Buddhas when you become the Buddha. All living beings born from eggs, born from wombs, born from humidity, born by transformation, whether with form or without form. One is with form and one is without form. With form, we know this is born with form, all this is with form. We have form, a makeup of molecules, protons, electrons, with form. Do you know that there are existence without form? You can only identify those existence with form? Yes, we are. Our senses are too limited. We can only feel and touch and sense those with form. Without form, we can sense them. We can even sense, sometimes we can feel energy, but we can see them, we can hear them. So if you think that only form exists in this world, maybe your view is a little limited. There are things that do not have form, but they still exist. So whether with form or without form, that means they are categorized according to whether they are material or immaterial. Form, the material part, all living beings in Kamadhatu. Now it's with forms. Yu jie with form. Immaterial, without form, those beings in Arupadhatu, without form. Only consciousness left. And some beginners would get terrified after listening to this. Oh, isn't it bad without form? I need a form. It's bad without form. This is my body. If I don't have this body, it would be bad. I need a body. And let me tell you, it's exactly because of this body you get into trouble. We all get into trouble because we have a body. But most people cherish this body as the good thing. It does not mean that you want to spoil this body, you want to exploit this body. You still have to keep it in good shape. But remember, this body is rented only. This body is not permanent. This body will go. Maybe at the most 100 years. It's a lease. It has to go. Unrenewable. You can't renew the lease. No curtain, no mercy on you. Because this form, because of this karmic formation that we got this form. Next paragraph, whether they have perception or do not have perception, either thoughtful or thoughtless. What does that mean? We already have classified the four modes of birth that you know about. We already have classified existence with form and without form. Now, how about existence that have consciousness and those that do not have consciousness? So according to whether they have sensation, perception, and volition, we classify them according to consciousness. Do you believe that there is existence that they can live beyond consciousness? It seems so miraculous. Perception and volition, those with perception and volition, with senses, they are in Kamadhatu and Rupadhatu, like us. We have senses, we have volition, we have perception, we have sensation, we have volition. Certainly we have consciousness, and we call that alaya consciousness. That is with sensations, with perception, with volition. And there are those without, those in the third dhyana of Arupadhatu, which is called the dhyana of pure emptiness. They are beyond the polluted consciousness. In other words, they are beyond the consciousness that we have. Their consciousness is not polluted. Our consciousness is polluted. And I use that polluted, quote and unquote, as a metaphor describing how our consciousness is being tainted by our mental defilements, by our greediness, jealousy, hatred, you name them. We all have them. We pollute the consciousness. So there is such a thing without consciousness. And in the Chinese language, 非想非非想天 非想非非想定 dhyana of pure emptiness in the third dhyana of Arupadhatu, for those who have done meditation. And Diamond Sutra is so profound. For beginners, probably you don't know what I'm talking about. And how is it related to my life? Every day I'm going to work, I'm eating, I'm doing my daily chores. How is it all related to my life? There's so much relation. You got to have patience to listen before you can find out more about it. The sutra, it's 5,800 words in the Chinese language. If you analyze in details, you know a lot about the world and the universe and the relationship among humans between universe. But you really need patience and intelligence to go on. Okay, let's go on. Whether they have perception or do not have perception, either thoughtful or thoughtless, and neither thoughtful nor thoughtless, we must lead all the beings to the final nirvana for the extinction of reincarnation. Nothing arises without a cause. Everything is the result of karma and causality. It possesses no nature, no self-nature. So that's the reason why it says in the next paragraph. Maybe let's read the next paragraph also. Although immeasurable, uncountable, infinite number of living things are thus led to the final nirvana for the extinction of reincarnation, those beings have become liberated, yet the truth is not a living being has been liberated. How come that every being is liberated and it says the truth is that not a being is liberated? Is there any contradiction in there? When you're reading the sutra, that's a contradiction. It says those beings have become liberated, and yet the truth is that not a single living being has been liberated. How come there seems to be a contradiction in there? Let's deal with this. Nothing arises without a cause. And we call that causality. The fact that you come here, of course, there's so many causes that leading you to come here. And everything is the result of karma and causality. You really need to study a lot before you know this sentence. Everything is the result of karma and causality. Everything possesses no self-nature. What is self-nature? And some people call this self-nature ego. Self-nature in the Chinese language is 自性. So what is self? Let's define what is something that has self-nature according to the definition put forward by our sutra. If something has self-nature, if something we can call that thing has a self-nature, it should contain some characteristics of having self-nature. The first characteristic is it's got to be permanent. The second characteristic is it can depend on its own for existence. The third definition of self-nature is it does not require causality for it to exist. But in fact, if we find everything in this world, there's nothing like that. Nothing is permanent. Nothing is not dependent on others for existence. Nothing can exist by itself. Can you exist all by yourself? Are you permanent? I'm independent. I have a job. I have a family. Am I independent? If you think carefully, you're not independent emotionally and materially. As a matter of fact, we find out more and more emotionally, all of us with our polluted self, we're not dependent. You're not independent. You depend on the moods of others for living. Your mood is being affected by the mood of others. Your family members, your colleagues. You're being affected not just by your family members, by the society you're living in, by the country, by the politics. Everything comes within the web of causality. You can't exist on your own. So going by that definition, you and I have no self-nature. But we would like to identify that we have a self-nature. We call that ego. I have an ego. You have an ego. And the problem comes from the ego. Because of that ego, we got into trouble. That's exactly what the Buddha wants to introduce to us in the first few chapters. Let's deal with our own ego. Do you care to deal with your ego? In psychology, in the study of psychology at university, I remember I took Psychology 100, the 200 levels, the 300 levels, up to the 400 levels, advanced psychology. And most psychologists study the behavior of others, not of oneself. Sigmund Freud studied child psychology, locking his little daughter in a cage and they observed her for a month. Some people said that's crazy. And he studied child psychology by actual analysis and facts. But psychology put emphasis on others. How do you behave? Group psychology. Human behavior, the study of human behavior. How do we behave? How do patients behave? How do doctors behave? Relationship among behaviors of different beings. But Buddhism reverted back to the mind. Know about ourselves first. How can you study? How do you know yourself? How do you study others without knowing yourself? Our own ego. How does that work? So, we said, since nothing possesses any self-nature, which we still have to deal with it as we continue to explain the sutra, we still have to get deeper and deeper into it. We're just touching the tip of the iceberg about ego. You got to have patience when you study sutras. It's not a McDonald's. You get it in 5 minutes. Fast food. No. You really have to study it bit by bit. We just conceptualize everything as beings and name them as such and stigmatize them. Based on our background, our education, we conceptualize things. And it says here, we liberate, Bodhisattvas help others to liberate themselves from suffering, help all sentient beings, and after all, not a single sentient being is liberated. Why? Our nature is ultimately pure and subject to neither birth or nirvana. Thus, there are no beings to be liberated, and there is no nirvana to be attained. It is simply that all beings revert to their own nature. We have that nature of Buddhahood. We have that nature of Tathagata. It's just being polluted. We're just like a mirror. When you are a mirror, the mirror, when there's light, all images appear on the mirror. And when the images are gone, when the images passed away and not in front of the mirror, then there's no images. Don't mistake the images as yourself. The mirror itself, that reflectability function is always there. It does not matter what images you put. All images, that reflectability will reflect it. That reflectability function is pure and unchanged. What is changing? It's the images that are changing. It's the forms that are changing. Not the nature of the mirror. The nature of the mirror is always pure, untainted. But you need to know it. Don't mistake the images for the reflectability, for the purity of the mirror. The mirror is always pure with no images of his own appearing on it. These images are simply reflection from outside. The mirror has no attachment to any images, and yet there is no image that does not appear in it. The mirror does not have that self, nor does the image have a self. We just identify them as self. All living things and their minds change in the world of phenomena. Since they are phenomena, these living things fundamentally are non-existent. We exist because of causes. We exist together because we have this body because all the causes put together. But that does not mean that we don't have a consciousness. We still have that consciousness, but our body it's a body of causality. Our ego is causality. But how about that consciousness? That pure, untainted consciousness. That's the Tathagata. We have to study it. What is responsible for reincarnation if we don't have a form? Do you know in reincarnation? We're always changing our form. When Janet passed away, next life it became Joe. He lived another life, she lived another life, and become Jack. It's always changing in the modes of reincarnation. But her consciousness, the Alaya consciousness, is that one, that mirror that contains all the images, that if we purified ourselves, we'll found the untainted consciousness. And when we found that, we'll be pure of karma, we'll be out from reincarnation, we'll be out from suffering. So this concept of ego and self-nature, I would like to stop my explanation at this point because there will be much more later about self-nature, about ego. But here I would like to explain nirvana because it says whether they have perception or do not have perception, either thoughtful or thoughtless, and neither thoughtful nor thoughtless, we must lead all the beings to the final nirvana for the extinction of reincarnation so that they can be liberated. Now what is nirvana? The next few words explain it. Extinction of reincarnation. No more reincarnation. Factually, what's the purpose of following the Buddha's teaching and practiced it? So that we can be out from reincarnation. You and I, we're reincarnating in the 6 paths of reincarnation. Life after life, we're doing that. This is a temporary body. We'll take another form. We'll take another form in our next life. What kind of form? A woman, a man, rich or poor, healthy or unhealthy? Depends on your karma. What do? You created your next form. What you've done now would determine what you're going to be in your next life. So you're responsible. Not Buddha, not anybody, not creator. You created your own life. You created your own world. Don't blame the Buddha. Don't blame the creator, or if you believe in a creator. It's you yourself. You created your next life. Of course, the Buddha said, don't follow a next life anymore. Liberate yourself from the bondage of reincarnation. No more life. We call that nirvana. Because as long as you're always reincarnating, you're never out from suffering. You always carry that karma forward and forward and forward. Nirvana. What is nirvana? Nirvana means fire extinguished. It's a Sanskrit word, fire, extinguished fire. In Buddhism, it is used to describe the condition that exists when the three flames of delusion, desire, and anger are extinguished. These are the three fires, the three poisons that we're all poisoned by this, by your own flame. We're all burned by our own flame. What are these flames that get you burned? Your own delusion, your own desire, your own anger, roughly speaking. It's your own that leads you to hell, to heaven, to any modes of reincarnation. Not created. You created your next life. There's two kinds of nirvana, complete nirvana and incomplete nirvana. What is incomplete nirvana? You get enlightened, fully enlightened, you still have this body. So this body is nirvana with a remainder. You still have this body remaining behind. It's not yet complete. When Buddha lived 2,000 years, 600 years ago, he already attained Anuttara Samya Sambuddhi, but he still carried this body. He already have entered into nirvana, but with a remainder. Something remained, the body remained. That is nirvana with a remainder. Your body remained, you still suffer. So Buddha still had to go through death, sickness, aging, the 8 sufferings that we usually have: aging, birth, aging, sickness, death, suffering arising from departure from beloved ones, suffering arising from insatiable desire, suffering arising from interaction among humans, suffering arising from natural disasters, suffering arising from so much suffering in this world. All this suffering you still have to go through as long as you have this body. Buddha already entered into nirvana, but still have the body remaining until death. So that's called nirvana with remainder. And how about nirvana with nothing behind? When the body is gone, nothing left behind. So without remainder, that means you burn the body, would become ashes. If you want a metaphor for complete nirvana, what do you see when the ashes get blown away? No more ashes. That's complete nirvana. That's complete nirvana that we're talking about. And nirvana, this concept, you need to know more about it. It's nirvana without remainder is the state of total liberation from all physical and mental conditions. The hindrances due to defilements in the mind are cut off, and the body that is composed of the 5 aggregates is extinguished. Therefore, there's nothing remaining to depend upon. The 5 aggregates, you know all the 5 aggregates? Matter, sensation, perception, volition, and consciousness. The 5 aggregates, no more 5 aggregates. 无蕴. Our body is composed of the 5 aggregates, all extinguished, no more remaining behind. That's nirvana without remainder. Nirvana with remainder, this is in contrast to nirvana with remainder, where the body still exists. The enlightened being is still subject to the laws of karma and subject to suffering. All right, so next, the last paragraph, chapter 3. Why so Supudi? If a bodhisattva still has the false notion of an ego, a personality, a being, a life, it is not a bodhisattva. This is called the four fallacious conception. If a bodhisattva still have the false notion of an ego, if the bodhisattvas still have the false notion of a personality, if the bodhisattvas still have the notion of a being, still have the notion of a life, it is not a bodhisattva. We have to find out more about it. How come all these four notions are conceptually wrong, fallacious? Don't hang on to it, because these four deal with the ego. So, we finished chapter 3. But before we leave for the day, I'd like to give you a poem you can think about. Like the Bodhi tree is a body. The body is like a Bodhi tree. A bright mirror on the chest, the mind. Constantly and diligently rub it clean so that it cannot get a dust. So what this poem says is, our body is like a Bodhi tree, we're like a mirror with so much dust on it. If you always rub it and rub it clean, it would not, there will be no dirt on it. So that we always purify ourselves, carry out our behavior in a good way, in a virtuous way, practicing benevolent deeds. If we're always doing that, we're like a clean mirror without dust. That is one poem. Like the Bodhi tree is a body, like a bright mirror, the mind constantly and diligently rub it clean so that it cannot get a dust. So that is one poem. There's another poem. In essence, Bodhi has no tree, and the bright mirror has no chest. In essence, that is not a thing. On what then can dust gather? There's nothing. In essence, there's not a thing. On what can the dust gather if there's not a thing? Think of the mirror as the reflectability. It reflects all, but it does not attach to all. It accepts all, but it does not attach to any one of it.